The Pieces Lie Where They Fell by Evil Humor. Edited and co-authored by Anon E. Mouse Jr. Read for you by My Name is R. Chapter 45. Windbreaker, Page Turner, Rex, Vix Lee, and Nightblade. Part 1. Windbreaker. Groaning in pain, Windbreaker pushed himself onto his talons, wincing as there was a nasty scraping sound against the floor that made his aching head feel even worse. He hadn't felt this bad in a long time, when he had really binged badly, and he knew he hadn't been drinking this time. In fact, he had been running away when something heavy smashed into his head. "Ah, you are all awake," some pony cooed at him, causing Windbreaker to snap his eyes open to see that he and the rest of the group were in a glass sphere-like room. Standing in front of them was King Well-Banded, but "Whom, or what, are you?" Rex barked at the Earth Pony, who was just chuckling at them. It sounded like talons dragged down a chalkboard, only worse somehow. "Very well, I suppose I could honor a last request of sorts," Well-Banded said, before his voice began to change into something more ambiguous, darker but with a hint of lightness to it. "I am the Nightmare, the bearer of the mantle of bad dreams, and my role and purpose is to scare those who stray back onto the right path." "Could have fooled me," Vix Lee snarked as she slowly got to her hooves, with Paige and Knight standing up. Only Viddle was still on the ground, and something was wrong. "Oh, you understand so little, Laughter." It laughed again. "Everything that we have done has caused fear and terror in the masses' dreams. I have been doing my very best work of late, to ensure that the nightmares received by all of you, be you ponies, minotaurs, changelings, diamond dogs, griffins, owizodals, dragons, yaks, or others, are very effective. Is that not right, Loyalty?" Windbreaker looked over at Knight, who seemed to be spooked by this, before the Bat Pony managed to shove it down. "In any case, it matters not for you. Oh, it matters not, for you have lost before you even began your pathetic attempts to stop me. I hold magic, and soon enough this age will pass into another, and with magic failing to do their duties, there will be no magic in the age to come, and it will be gone from this world for a very long time." Paige hissed, flaring her bug wings. "Tsk, tsk, kindness," the Nightmare said as it stalked closer to them, with shadows forming on its head that resembled a horn. "And here I am performing your duties and bestowing an act of kindness on you all that falls in the realm of the Lady of Dreams." It laughed, showing shadow fangs. "She will be furious to learn what I am planning to do to her second heirs." Before any of them could react, there was a burst of brilliant light from its fake horn, and Windbreaker suddenly needed to do a break in midair as he got a wave of confusion. Landing on a cloud, he frowned at the sight of the mountainous landscape of the ancestral kingdom of Griffinstone, far different from the more forested Griffish Isles where some of his cousins lived, below. This was his home, of course, but something was off from it. Something very important. It was on the tip of his tongue, and he would need just a second to figure it out. "Windbreaker, are you okay?" a female voice called out to him from behind. "Yes, Mom," he said instinctively, as he tried to figure out why his throat was burning so badly all of a sudden. It couldn't be because of a bad drink. He never touched the stuff, and had no plans to start drinking. What was going on? Part 2, Page Turner. With a soft chirp, Paige looked out over the herd of foals waiting for her. "Hello, little ones," she said happily. "Good morning, Miss Turner," they all replied, their own faces beaming. "What story are you going to read to us today?" One asked eagerly. Paige smiled. "How about the day Queen Chrysalis the Gentle first met with Prince Shining Armor the Valiant, and Princess Cadence the Radiant?" "Yeah!" the foals cheered, and Paige smiled back as she drew the scroll from the shelves and began to read. About half an hour later, she had finished the story, and smiled as most of her audience came up to thank her before leaving. Finally, the last one silently flew down and gave her a friendly nuzzle. "I see another story time went well," he remarked. Paige nuzzled her husband back. "They always do," she said happily. "That one's always been one of my favorites, too." "I can understand," Nightblade said with a chuckle. "After all, why wouldn't you love the story of how your ancestors got together and brought peace and happiness to an entire race?" Paige beamed. "And that peace and happiness has lasted for generations," she said. "Which reminds me, are you ready for the royal banquet tonight? Mother has really been looking forward to it. And of course, you and I will be accompanying her." "Absolutely," Nightblade replied. "Mother and Father will be there as well. You know, they still can't stop bragging to the other noble families about how their son snagged the changeling princess. Won't listen when I say that it was love at first sight for both of us," he chuckled. Paige smiled back. "And it was one of the happiest days of my life," she said with a dreamy sigh. "Right up there with our wedding." Nightblade nuzzled her again, and she smiled as she felt his love flow into her. Part 3. Rex. "Professor Rex, is everything okay?" one of his students asked him with concern, as Rex paused in writing the last formula on the chalkboard. "Yes, everything is fine," Rex replied in a distracted tone, tapping the chalkboard as he tried to dissect what was bothering him. It could not be his upcoming conference where he would show and demonstrate his latest alchemical creation to the rest of the Academy's staff, as well as experts across the globe. He had been preparing for that for months. He was about to call his class back to session when something trickled into his head that he could not explain. Pausing, he turned to his students and leaned onto his desk. "Actually, there is something that I wish to inquire." "What is it, sir?" Rex knew that something was amiss. He just needed to figure out what. Part 4. Vixley. "Fillies and gentle colts, griffins and griffettes, dogs, dragons, my lords and lady minotaurs, and every other species represented here. Please put your hands, paws, hooves, or whatever have you for our very special host, Vixley!" There was a loud cheering as Vixley stepped onto the stage, waving to the audience. "Thank you so much," she exclaimed. "It's great to be here in the nation's capital." As the audience began to calm down, Vixley grinned. "Wow, it is so great to be here, and I'd like to apologize to some of the locals, 'cause I am pretty sure I scared the living daylights out of some of them on my way to this here theater." She looked out at the audience. "See, I flew all the way here from Ledra today, and there are some griffins and pegasi who will vouch for that, 'cause I went right through an entire flock of 'em this morning. And I tell you, one minute they were flying all together, then whoosh!" She clapped her hands together. "My skimmer and I went right past 'em, left 'em in the dust. Pretty good trick, considering we were flying over a lake." There was more laughter, and she grinned. "Now this skimmer, I'd tricked it up real good. When I say it goes fast, I mean fast. Faster than the speed of dark. I set it up at the start of this well-lit tunnel, almost a mile long. Then Sumtar hit the switch, and by the time the lights were out, and believe you me, they all went out at the very same instant, that skimmer and I were already at the other end." More laughter, and Vixley's smile grew even wider as she continued her routine, finally coming to the end. "Thanks so much, everybody. Good night!" As she left the stage, still smiling and waving, she headed for her dressing room. Now was her absolute favorite part of the show, and sure enough, a few minutes later, there was a knock at the door. "Come in," she called. A moment later, 9 familiar faces crowded in, and she beamed. "So how was the show tonight?" "Wonderful as always, honey," her mother told her with a proud smile. "Yeah, you were really knocking 'em dead out there," Heracles chimed in. Vixley looked to the next door. "Dad?" "Shipmaster Petros, the most well-respected Minotaur in all of the Minos Islands," smiled. "You were great, Vixley. I'm so proud of you." Tears of joy sprang from her eyes. "Thanks, Daddy." Standing up, she moved to give him a hug, one he happily returned. Something was niggling at her, but she shrugged it off. This was her and her family's time to celebrate. Nightblade. Part 5? Hold on one second. Yes, Part 5. Nightblade. Nightblade opened his eyes as he woke up in his luxurious cloud bed next to his wife Page Turner. Tilting his head, Night managed to pull himself out from under her hollow hoof, and went to the window. They were in the Blade Manor in the Badlands. This was his barony that his parents gave to them as a wedding gift. It was his inheritance, after all, but both Mom and Dad decided that they needed a place to live. It was done on the catch, however, that they fill the place with as many foals as they could, and as soon as they could. He looked down the street and saw a number of his workers pass by the front gates, waving up to him. It had taken a while to prove himself to them, but they had come to like him as a good and fair boss. "Good morning, love," Paige said as she walked to his side, placing a kiss on his cheek. "How are we today?" Night closed his eyes, holding them tight. She noticed this immediately and went to console him. "Nighty, is something wrong?" "Everything is just perfect," he said with a low tone, before turning around and wrapping his hooves around her neck, strangling her. Night ignored her protest, with his heart hardening at what he had to do. Wincing in pain, he heard the neck snap, before he heard the sound of mocking laughter. "Well, well, well, I did not expect you to awake first, Loyalty." The nightmare grinned at him, while Night felt nothing but pure hatred for this monster. "Tell me, how did you know the dream was false?" "You made me happy," Night snapped, drawing his sword. "I don't deserve that. Not now, and not ever. Not after what I did to Paige. I deserve Tartarus for it." "Perhaps you will find out after I kill you," the nightmare said, narrowing its head towards Night. "The judge rarely accepts any excuse for a crime, and you have committed several serious crimes. I wonder how long you will suffer." It let out a snarl of pain as a bolt slammed into its side. "Night, once we deal with this monster, we're going to have some serious talks," Winda snorted, as he loaded another bolt and prepared to fire it at their foe. "If you live that long, Honesty, which I strongly doubt," the nightmare said, as its body shifted the bolt out of its side and let it fall to the ground. "If you will allow an ancient soul that cannot even remember if it is the Lord or the Lady of Nightmares, my dream unto you failed because you couldn't believe the lie that you had no addiction, and that you had a family that you had a family that loved you, and a person to call Mom. Correct?" Night saw with worry that the nightmare was able to get under Wind's skin, and caused the griffin to make a deadly mistake. Thankfully, everyone forgot about the Minotaur in the room, and the fact that she had a warhammer. "That's such a bad joke, I forgot to laugh," Vixley snorted, as she swung Signor Hardhead into its side, knocking it across the room. as is messing with these guys while I'm still around. Laughter. The nightmare spat angrily as it rose to its hooves. Out of all the elements, I hate yours the most. Always unpredictable and bothersome, no matter who laughter is. Nor the fact that tricking you is akin to fooling honesty. Hey, what can I say? You can't fool a fool, Vixley said, with a grin on her face. Your little paradise was good, except for the fact I was topless and my mom didn't complain once about it. That ain't right, no matter what's going on. The nightmare let out a low roar at this, before narrowing its head and firing off a spell at the Minotaur, only for Paige's shield to snap into place to protect her. Kindness! The nightmare snarled as it saw her. How did you get out of your dream? Easy, Paige shot back. You may have created a wonderful world for me, but you made a very big mistake. She bared her fangs. You forgot why I'm the current queen of my hive. And what is that, pray tell? The nightmare glared. I am like my mother before me. She abandoned me to the elders of our hive so I would live a normal life, while I was to prepare for becoming the queen, before she killed herself as the suffering of our hive was too great for her. Paige said, as she began to weave a spell of her own. I am nothing like that coward who will leave her daughter an impossible mission to care for my changelings. I vowed to be the last queen of the Badlands hive, due to the endless abuse and hatred thrown at them. Hatred because of you! Paige screamed as she let loose a bolt of magic at the creature. Yes, the nightmare said, as it dove out of the way, a grin forming on its face. Chrysalis proved to be the perfect scapegoat, with her suicidal idea to invade Equestria. Then again, all those nightmares she was having of her hive wilting away did play some part in her decision all those years ago. Knight's heart wrenched itself into a knot as Paige froze at this revelation, her eyes going wide, her lips trembling, and her horn going out with her shield vanishing. Knight realized what was happening after his body was already moving to push Paige out of the way, feeling the end of his tail being singed by the ball of fire that the nightmare sent flying past. He crashed poorly into her, their limbs getting tangled up as they tried to stand up, with the nightmare throwing its head back in deep laughter. I forgot how much fun it is to torment mortals that I have not broken completely already. It gives me fresh ideas in what new nightmares I can bring to the world, it said with a happy sigh, before roaring out in pain as it briefly caught on fire. Such as being burned alive, you abomination? Rex growled viciously, as he took another bottle from his vest. And in case you are curious how I escaped mine, you made the error of leaving too many details out. It was a simple deduction when I could not recall all the steps that I took to become a professor at the academy. A mistake on my part, Generosity. One does not normally pick away at their lives like you do. The nightmare spat, shaking the flames off its body. How sad it must be that you would look for reasons why things are not what you always wished for, and latched onto an explanation that made your life a lie. The only lie here is that you think you will win. Right, Vittel? Knight risked a look at the Auxotilus, only to freeze as she had vanished. Ah, dear loyalty, the nightmare said from in front of him, nose to nose. I told you I had magic, and you were all doomed from the start to fail. The nightmare then slammed a shield into Knight's barrel and sent him flying backwards. Now comes the fun part, where I get to kill all of you, and magic gets to watch it happen for all eternity. Knight lifted his head in time to see Rex lob a smoke potion at the nightmare. At the same time, Paige created another shield to protect him, with Vixley moving a desk into a makeshift barrier, and Windbreaker bracing him on it to shoot at the nightmare. with it growling as it was forced to back up. "I think not," Rex growled as Knight got to his hooves and redrew his blade. And the battle was on. Alright, so when I saw Page Turner's dream, at first I thought that was Page Turner and Knight, both in the same, which would have made some sense. It would be easy enough to make a situation where those two would both be happy. They have different specifics as to their idea of the perfect whatever, but they do have many important details in common. Also, it looks like all 6 of them were captured, which kind of makes the last chapter's bits where everybody works together to help them escape feel kind of wasted. Wow, like, Regal, for example, is probably going to be in quite a bit of trouble, and maybe some of those other guards too, over nothing. They didn't do anything. They failed to save Knight. And, those changelings, some of whom are probably going to die from the guards, also failed to help. Just 2 examples. That's... wow. When the last chapter ended, I thought perhaps they had gotten 1 or 2 more, but I didn't for an instant think that they had captured all 6. Ah. Just... wow. It feels like a lot of build-up for a poor ending in the last 2 chapters. Not like ending of the story, but ending of what that build-up led to, as far as I can see. Maybe something more will come of it that I don't see yet. We'll see. Anyway, it's starting to look like we are in our final battle. There's only a few chapters left. I'm not going to tell you exactly how many, because I don't remember at the moment, and I'll just let you wonder. But we are approaching the end. Thank you for listening. I think that's everything I had for this chapter. Goodbye, everyone.